Hey guys, so today we'll be showing you some behind the scenes work from how I made my cyberpunk cosplay. So my cyberpunk cosplay was actually heavily inspired by amazing art from a digital artist I found online. His name is Vlad Pantic. So this video is going to cover a little bit of how I made the semi-bionic arm design as well as an overview of utilizing LEDs in your costume. LEDs were probably the biggest challenge for me on this project. I know just a tiny bit of C++. Overall, working with code is difficult if you're not familiar with it. So luckily there's tons of different tutorials, and I'll kind of outline how I was able to find information on how to get started with coding. So I didn't have to really learn how to write code. You're mostly just using code that's pre-written and just tweaking it and adjusting it to your needs. So I'd say the second biggest challenge was probably figuring out how to solder electrical wires and components and working with microcontrollers. It's definitely something, if you're going to get into stuff like this, I suggest reading up on soldering, watching YouTube videos, and practicing a lot with just like really cheap cables and boards. There's a bunch of kits that you can find on Amazon. I've actually purchased some myself just for practicing and learning things. Those are also great for learning how to program microcontrollers as well. Okay, so on to patterning. I generally follow the same process that most cosplayers use for patterning any type of foam or armor-based items. It's basically just cover up body parts in a lot of saran wrap, tape up that saran wrap, and then draw directly onto the tape, and then you just cut that piece out and transfer it to something like EVA foam or paper. It's a tried and true method. It really just ensures that your pattern fits to your body specifically. I usually prefer transferring that pattern from the taped pattern to something like craft foam, and then keeping that as the main template. I'll also actually label them what costume it came from, what piece it was for. A lot of times down the road, you'll find that you might need something that's similar pattern, and it's so helpful to just kind of take that as a base and just make adjustments to that character instead of completely having to start from scratch, especially for things that are like pauldrons. Pauldrons are my absolute least favorite thing to pattern. I save every single pauldron pattern I've ever made. They're all labeled, they're all in a bin, because you're creating this really weird rounded shape. With WoW armor, they often have to sit like way up high, so they're just really complex versus making something like bracers that just fit directly onto your arm. It's so much easier. Another really handy way to save some frustration and time, especially when you're just still learning how to work with either Worbla or with foam, is to kind of utilize patterns that other creators have already made. So I subscribe to a bunch of my favorite cosplayers on Patreon, and a lot of cosplayers will make and upload their patterns to certain tiers as well as their own tutorials. Some of them will sell them on their website or on Store Envy, so you can buy them after the fact even if you're not subscribed to their Patreon. So you don't have to do a monthly cost, you can just buy the ones that you want. I actually bought a pattern from Evil Ted for this cosplay. He has a ton of patterns for sale. They're really, really inexpensive. They're great for beginners. I ended up using his basic shoulder pattern for both the shoulder piece as well as the elbow. I used the same one for both pieces since it kind of fit what I was looking for. I did shape them with a bowl and shape them a little bit differently than how the pattern originally had it laid out. And then I also trimmed a bunch of excess off that I didn't necessarily need or want, to get the exact shape that I was looking for. So it was a great base. I didn't have to worry about kind of like figuring out a weird elbow pattern or anything like that. I just went off of what was already made, and it made it so much quicker to make everything else. Okay, so here is the arm fully assembled. It's a bit of a mess and is legitimately held in here with electrical and gaffer tape. The center LED piece is called a NeoPixel ring. These come in a few different sizes with varying amount of LEDs. The larger the size, the more LEDs it has. So for the NeoPixel ring, I used a 3.7 volt, 150 milliamp battery, and that kept them running for a couple hours on one charge, if I recall. Then we have the NeoPixel strip that ran down the center of my upper arm. I ordered another 3.7 volt battery. This one was a 500 milliamp. A circuit playground, and a NeoPixel strip with attached alligator clips. I used a few tutorials on Adafruit's website I highly suggest looking at the NeoPixel Uber guide on their website if you're interested in using these items. For coding, I used Arduino and installed the NeoPixel libraries. Instructions can be found in the Uber guide here. There's a bunch of different applications you can actually use to code these microcontrollers and the NeoPixel strips. The one I use is Arduino, although after the fact I learned that that is one of the more complex ones. So do a little bit of research, but the Uber guide is really the best place to figure out what your different alternatives are and what's going to work best for you. A big shout out to the 2 photographers that I did photo shoots with for this costume. I did 2 separate but similar looks for the same character. I shot one costume with Alvin, aka Extra Noodles, and the other one was with Jed, aka Radio8.uni. Their social media information can be found below and in the descriptions. And the biggest shout out goes to Vlad Pantic, the artist who originally inspired this whole costume and this whole process. I'll put links to his social media in the description below. Definitely be sure to check him out. He has some absolutely amazing digital art. And that's really it. So thank you guys for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and share. Until next time, guys.